This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. It is 5 p.m. And let me first welcome our members here. I'll just do a quick update that last night the Select Board appointed Mary Hartman as our Select Board member of the Trust. So welcome, Mary.
Thank
The
you.
Select Board The Select Board also nominated our former member, Linda Escobedo, to one of the non-Select Board positions on the trust. It's a two-part process. Step 2 will be at I guess, the next Select Board meeting to appoint Linda to that position. And welcome, Linda, on the call. And Town Manager Carrie LaFleur is on vacation, and Deputy Town Manager Megan Zumuto is acting Town Manager. So she's on our call today as a voting member, and as ruled by Town Council. So we have 5 voting members at today's meeting. So I will start with formally a roll call of members present. Mary Hartman,
Here.
Mike Lawson,
Present.
Rich Feely,
Here.
Megan Zumuto,
Here.
and Keith Bergman present. All right, so we have 5 here. Many of our usual suspects, attendees, welcome back. Liz Russ from the Regional Housing Services Office. We have Planning Board Chair Linda Miller from CHDC, Ray Andrews from the Housing Authority, Stephen Bader, and as I mentioned earlier, our nominee for the 6th spot, Linda Escobedo. Welcome all. Next item is approval of minutes. And there was a set of minutes that I had sent out for our April 23rd meeting. Now, there are 3 voting members who were there at that meeting, Mike, Rich, and myself. So I'd suggest if there's a motion from either Mike or Rich and a second by the other, we can take up approval of those minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Mike to approve the April 23rd minutes. Is there discussion? All right, so roll call vote on that motion, and I will. I'll call the roll. Mary Hartman abstain.
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
was. Yes.
Okay. Mike Lawson,
Yes.
Rich Feely,
Aye.
Megan Zumuto would also abstain, and Keith Bergman is in favor. So that is approved by a motion of 3 in favor, 2 abstentions, and not opposed. Thanks very much. Next item on our agenda is the annual election of officers, which we've typically done after a town meeting. And our bylaw provides for a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. And I just offer that if we'd like to proceed with this tonight, we can do that. If for any reason we want to wait, we can do that at our next meeting. But I would, if we're ready to proceed, I'd welcome any nominations for our, let's start with chair.
I nominate you, Keith. I second it. Congratulations.
Well,
Fatty.
so nomination, are there other nominations for chair? Okay. I will, I'll accept the nomination. This is going to be a busy year. If the real estate transfer fee passes, it may be the busiest year yet. And if it doesn't, it may be the slowest year that we've had, so. Let's, if we, why don't we take a vote on that motion to elect Keith Bergman as chair. I'll do a roll call. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Aye.
Megan,
Yes.
and Keith. Aye, so that is 5-0. Next, a nomination for vice chair, and I would like to make the nomination of Mary Hartman as vice chair, if Mary's willing. We've had our select board rep serve as, I think, typically serve as our vice chair. So I wanted to offer that for starters.
Can you tell me the amount, the duties that would be required from the vice chair? I mean, I know that you carry most of the load, Keith, so.
Yeah, well, I'll have to say, we haven't had the vice chair have to chair a meeting yet. So, but it is in the absence of the chair, the vice chair chairs the meeting. Thanks to Zoom and the ability to have a virtual meeting, even if I'm on Nantucket like I am today, I'm able to make the meeting. So I'd say it's if there were something that I had to recuse myself from, which also hasn't come up yet, then it would the vice chair would be in charge of that
Right.
part of the meeting. So I think it's not been very heavy lifting, but it's helpful to know that there's a chain of command if something happens. If haven't had COVID yet, knock wood. So
Me neither. So that's an honor. I'll accept if other people are willing to appoint me.
Sure.
is it
If you
is there a
call,
second for?
call
Do
a
we need a
roll, we'll
second?
find out.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, are there other nominations? Okay, all right, now we'll go to so with one nomination, I'll call the roll on that motion. Mary,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. So that passes unanimously also. And I'm just going to write it down that the motion, and I made the motion, and I'm going to assign Mike as the second to that motion for the purposes of the record. Next, we have a clerk, which is also, I think, Rich, have you been, who's been the clerk?
I have no
Mike,
idea.
or-
Oh,
Okay,
Mike.
Mike,
Oh.
okay. Need your,
When the
Sure,
committee was
there you
formed,
go.
I came to the meeting late and discovered I'd been elected clerk.
that's right,
Quality operation.
right. Well,
My
I think,
concern,
and I
Keith,
think,
is you do such a
Yeah.
good job with the
Yeah.
minutes
Yeah.
that, you know,
Golden Retriever.
I haven't
did it.
called on the clerk to do the minutes yet.
And, well, as long as
So-
you promise not to, I'm
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
in your
so
service.
long as I can
I think I'm,
prepare, and I usually show this and try not to put it on the screen for too long, but here are the minutes, that my updates and taking notes as we go. from this prep sheet very soon after the meeting, and I'll happy. It helps me to get prepared for the meeting, and so I'm happy to continue to do that. So, all right, and so
We need a
other,
motion.
so I nominate. Yeah, yeah. You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move we name Michael clerk.
And
Keith, I
I'll
think you're
second that
fading in
motion.
and out.
All right. I'm gonna shut off the video for a while. It might be my in-laws house may have bad internet out here, 30 miles at sea. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds better.
Okay. All right. So, uh, um, all right. So let's elect Mike Lawson as clerk. Mary,
Yes,
Mike,
Yes,
Rich,
Aye,
Megan,
Yes.
and Keith, aye. So that's 5-0 also. Very good. Thanks. Thanks very much. Next item is a debrief on the annual town meeting, and just to sort of close the loop on the 4 articles that the trust and the other housing groups have been monitoring these past months. All 4 of them passed. Article 32, fossil fuel free amendment, 34, the MBTA community zoning, 35, the 2-family dwelling and residence B, and Article 40, the funding for community preservation projects, including for the trust and for the Regional Housing Services Office. So congratulations to all of us. Thanks. I want to thank the article sponsors, the Select Board, Planning Board, and Community Preservation for their leadership on those articles. For our information and the public's, it might be helpful to just quickly go over that on the fossil fuel free amendment, the bylaw that was passed in January of 2023 was actually approved earlier in the day, on the day of the 2024 annual town meeting, April 29th. So that bylaw that was passed last year will be taking effect 6 months after the date that DOER gave the town's approval to participate in the pilot project. That approval was given on December 22nd of last year, so that bylaw takes effect June 22nd of this year. The amendments that were made by the voters on April 29th in Article 32, those amendments still have to be approved by the Attorney General, and when she approves them, then they will become effective as of the date that she certifies. So, bottom line, the basic bylaw takes effect June 22nd. The amendments will take effect. Some we'll hear about it sometime in the next 90 days, which is how long the AG has to prove it. And as we've talked before, the Novo Riverside Commons 40B will be subject to that bylaw that passed at the April 29th town meeting, because that is a condition they voluntarily agreed to in the decision that the Zoning Board of Appeals issued on April 16th. So that's great that that project will be subject to it. The it's been raised with the other 40B residences at Thorough. That one's just from what I saw today, the ZBA has reposted its agenda for this Thursday night, indicating that the residences at Thorough hearing was going to reopen. And now it's going to be, it was going to reopen Thursday night after, I think, a 1 or 2 month delay. Now it's going to be continued for a date that is not yet certain, but that the applicant has agreed to extend their application, the ZBA's deadline for a decision from August to October. So I'm going to tune in on the ZBA meeting on Thursday night just to find out what updated information there is. But in any event, we and the ZBA had raised the issue of compliance with fossil fuel free bylaw with them as well. So we'll continue to monitor that.
Keith, I have a question.
Yes, Mary.
So the basic bylaw that goes in effect June 22nd, that doesn't apply to them either, right? Because they
That's right.
earlier than that.
It does not, but they agreed that Novo agreed that if town meeting approved the bylaw on at this annual town meeting.
Yeah, I meant
When
Thorough residences.
Oh, yeah, Thorough residences, no, that both of the 40Bs were filed long before the fossil fuel free bylaw took effect.
That's unfortunate.
But-
Okay.
Yeah, because the town, even the bylaw the town meeting voted on last year wasn't, the AG didn't approve it until 2 weeks ago. And the next step with that bylaw, as with any bylaw, is for the town clerk to post it.
Mhm.
And I see that it is posted on the website now. So it's in effect, but if you read the language in the bylaw, it doesn't tell you when it's in effect unless you connect the dots and know when 6 months after DOER approval is. And it might, maybe a suggestion to Megan for those who are reading that bylaw on the town website, if the effective date of the bylaw could be made clearer, because it doesn't say in the bylaw, but
Yes.
it would, yeah.
We, in preparation for this evening, I did talk to our sustainability director who connected with our town council about this, and I got feedback from them that I don't fully understand, so I apologize. I want to jump in here, but I have
Yeah.
questions about Mina's interpretation, but what I have is that the January 2023 bylaw, I think this is brand new information, became effective on May 10th, which was on Friday. And
Okay, that's when it was posted by the
yeah.
Town clerk. Okay.
So council also suggested using May 10th as the effective date for the newly amended bylaw, but I was also reading it the same as you, that how could it be before June 22nd?
Yeah,
So
it can't be. Yeah.
I think they're missing something there. And so
Well, I
more to
think that
come, but it's imminent.
right, the confusion might come from the fact that the Article 32 that we just adopted 2 weeks ago
Mhm.
strikes the 6 months.
Yes.
It amends the bylaw that was passed a year ago by striking 6 months and inserting or it struck something
Yeah.
and to which I read to mean or to 90 days, I think, which meant that it would take effect in March this year, which is before the town meeting, which doesn't make sense. So
The
so
letter
whatever
we got was
guidance,
very confusing from the
Yeah.
attorney general.
yeah, maybe the shorthand way would be whatever advice it is or determination the town makes
Been
with
there.
town council's advice, just post that
Sure.
as a write on the bylaw document as a guide for when the first bylaw takes effect and the second bylaw. Once we know that. It is all very confusing, but it's it'll be great to have that clarification.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thanks for that. On the MBTA, since we're talking about bylaws on the MBTA community zoning, there's you know, it's a zoning bylaw. And by the way, just take a deep breath. Linda Miller, would you turn on your video if you're there? Linda, all right.
Oh, sorry, I'm having, hello.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you go. All right. Well, round of applause, people, for Linda Miller at who
Thank you guys
led
for,
us who led us through. Wow. And special, and I'm going to give a shout out to Mary Hartman too, because the select board statement in favor of MBTA community zoning said everything that we needed to hear and from our community leaders, and it was what a great tag team at town meeting.
don't
presenting
forget
that.
our Division of Planning and Land Management, who's also
Absolutely, yes.
there.
Elizabeth did a great job,
Elizabeth did a yeoman job,
And Megan.
and Megan too, right?
and thank you, Megan, too. It was just great, a great team effort, and thank you as well for all of our Housing Roundtable partners who supported this and agreed to go on the long journey with the planning board, who seemed just a little apprehensive when we met last summer about this, and we agreed to go to all of your meetings.
Thank you. Yes.
So very good. We may take this summer off though, although we're all interested in parking. So if
Yes.
that's your next big thing. So thanks so much. With respect to the effective date of, yeah.
I was just going to clarify, I am no longer the chair of the planning board. That has passed on to Andrew Boardman as of our
very
last
good.
meeting. But I can't keep myself away from our affordable housing proponents, so.
Oh, very good. We appreciate your being here. I also wanted to just take a moment or two to talk about some of the logistics about now that the bylaw is passed town meeting, there's still a couple of hurdles to go through. One is Attorney General approval of the zoning bylaw, and the other is the Housing and Livable Communities approval of the town's application for compliance with the MBTA communities law, and it's the HLC determination will tell us, I guess, eventually what the percentage of affordable for projects with more than 10 units. What are we going on 10%, 15%, or 20% of those units is requiring them to be affordable? What's ironic is the way zoning works is generally known. Zoning bylaws take effect as of the date of the town meeting that approved them. So, and it's from a retroactive standpoint, but if a developer came in today, they could, at their own risk, submit an application subject to that bylaw because it's in effect. And I'm not sure what we would tell them, though, about the percentage of 10 or 15 or 20%. I'm guessing since HLC has not approved 20% or 15% yet, the default answer is 10%. But anyway, so that's that could be, and maybe there are other communities that be interested to know what Lexington is doing since they had a period of time when they were before they were I think approved by before they got their HLC approval. So anyway, it's the jury, there's still determinations that we'll be hearing about from the Attorney General and the Housing and Livable Communities, which will finalize this thing. And I had a question about whether HLC ever ended up. I know that the town submitted a pre-review of the bylaw, for which supposedly written guidance would come within 90 days. I don't know if there was ever any pre-review
Not
received
yet.
from.
We haven't received it yet. They
HLC.
said it was
Okay.
on its way. But it will be here shortly. But we have not received the feedback
Yeah.
yet.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yes, Mike.
Why, I'm just curious as to, in terms of the percent of affordable housing, how would it be different than what we submitted?
It wouldn't. At this point,
Well,
we have 20%.
Yeah. The bylaw as submitted went for, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is written as Lexington's was that for where there's more than 10 units, then 20% of those would be affordable if approved by HLC from our economic feasibility analysis. If there's not enough to approve 20%, it would be 15. If there's not enough for them to approve 15%, it would be the 10 to which we're entitled under the statute. So, and what's also, it's my understanding from watching a few of the webinars that the AG and HLC gave over the last months. Once the AG approves the bylaw, that's it, but that zoning bylaw is in effect, whether or not as written, it satisfies HLC under the MBTA Communities Act. So that could be complicating. I mean, if HLC doesn't like what's in the bylaw and we can't fix it, administratively, that's another vote of town meeting to do it. But in the meantime, I'm not aware that any communities have gone back to town meeting once they got their HLC analysis. Maybe there have been some.
I
But it's
thought
all very,
Lexington did.
did they go back to town
I
meeting
thought
to
they,
fix?
I thought they
they
did.
did?
I
Okay.
I
Yeah.
could be incorrect, but that's
Yeah.
my impression.
Okay.
but the default
the-
until
the-
all of this, the default until all of this gets worked out is gonna be 10, right?
I think you could argue if we asked for 20, unless that's not allowed by EOHLC, but since we haven't heard anything
Right.
from them, it would seem to me that, as Megan said, it would be 20.
Yeah.
But,
It would probably be
that's probably for the courts and the
worth
lawyers
having.
to work out.
Yeah, it'd certainly be worth having town council give you an opinion with that guidance information also plastered on the text of the bylaw once that gets posted
Yeah,
on. So it's all complicated. We're not the only ones going through this process. So we have plenty of company, and the bigger picture, as I think we've talked about before, is that in the House version of the state budget, there was an outside section that was passed that would extend the deadline, all of the community's deadlines by another year, by one more year to come into compliance. So if that's, we don't know. I didn't check to see if that's in the Senate version or not. Of the bylaw. I'll do that after this meeting because I'm curious. But it was going to be you know, it was going to be a lot of work, obviously, on HLC's part to approve everyone's bylaw. And there's no way, and if they can't review ours in a timely fashion, it'll be before, you know, with the deadline this December 31st for many more communities who might be having fall town meetings, that, you know, I think HLC might need the additional time to act. So, so thank you again. Done on this bylaw, and are there any other questions before we move on? I just wanted to make folks aware about that bylaw. Very good. And then the last article I'll talk about is the community preservation appropriations. Those take effect July 1st. The CPC meets at 7 o'clock tonight, and I'm gonna monitor that meeting. They'll be discussing grant agreements for the amounts just approved. And I see where they'll be closing out the Giroux House project 367 Com Ave, where there's an unexpended amount of 200 for that project. So they're going to close that project out, and I think we've discussed before, perhaps, or I know that I think the Housing Authority did, that those it would seem appropriate since those funds were once counted and in the housing bucket. You know, you have the 4 buckets: housing, historic, open space, and recreation. That it would seem appropriate for those funds to remain in the housing bucket, and they would be, if they could be put into by town meeting into a community housing reserve fund, then they could be spent out for another housing project. So I think it may have been the Housing Authority that had the discussion about this, but I think it would be appropriate for this board and for the other housing boards to that $240,000 returned from the Giroux project be transferred to the Community Housing Reserve Fund to be available for other community housing projects. If anyone agrees with that, you could say so moved. We could discuss it
I
further.
certainly agree with that, Keith. The question is, do we have to wait for next year's town meeting, or can they designate it to us or the Housing Authority as housing funds unused?
No, it requires the town meeting vote, but I think what the way it should happen is the same town meeting that, it took 2 town meetings to get the money to a reuse last year. It took the first it took in January of 2023 the over $1 million in Junction Village funds for the Christopher Heights were moved into the housing reserve. And then at the annual town meeting in April of last year, they were taken out. Those 2 steps can be done in one article. And I guess I'm just hoping, as they approach funding for the upcoming fiscal year, which will be right around the corner, with their application process, probably that they would have a deadline of this September again. That it would it might be worth a shot to say, hey, there's $240,000 on account. In addition to the new money you're going to get next year, could you please reserve this 240, this old money for housing? And then so that it would be available along with what other funds would be available in the new year. So it wouldn't be until there's a town meeting to move them out.
Keith, is that what they did with the Junction Village funds? Did they earmark that for housing, or did that go into the general bucket?
No, they earmarked it for housing at the January town meeting, and then they took them out to fund the trusts, to transfer the funds to the trust at the
But it
April
stayed
town
in,
meeting.
stayed in housing the whole time.
It stayed in housing the whole time.
In CPC,
Yeah.
okay, so there is a precedent for this money that
Yes,
comes
yeah,
back. Okay.
there is, and also and I think just from their bookkeeping, it's easier because every year they have to make a determination of what did 10% of the funds,
Yeah.
did at least 10% of their funds go to housing, open space, and historic, because the law says so.
It's my
And if you pull
recollection,
out, if you,
it's
I'm
my
sorry, Mike.
recollection, it's my recollection that that's pretty much their standard procedure. That if a product in a particular category doesn't come to fruition, they put the money in that particular category, but they can move it, at any time in the future. If there would be some project for, let's say, open space that needs, as long as they meet the minimum requirements, allocations on an annual basis. So are you suggesting that we would
Yes.
write to them and?
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
suggesting that if we vote to request that the next special or annual town meeting transfer the $240,000 returned from the Giroux project be transferred to the Community Housing Reserve Fund to be available for other community housing projects in the future.
With this
Keith, I certainly support that, but I gather there's some question that we need a special town meeting about the, residential, or the senior tax exemption.
That's
if
an
we have-
election.
That's a special
That's an
election.
election.
An election,
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
mind. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Would this
yeah,
240 be used to meet the 10%
No,
minimum that they need each year?
no, it would not be, and it would be my hope that they would not use it for that, but rather say, hey, we've already counted this in the housing bucket before, so
No,
we'll just transfer it in. That's
you
certainly
can't
how
do-
they did the $1 million for Christopher Heights.
You can't do.
It didn't enter. But what's more, I guess, when they're dividing up whatever the finite pie is, let's say $2 million for all 4 buckets for next year's town meeting. I'd want to be able to compete for the for a healthy share of those funds, and to get the and have the 240,000 available, and rather than just say, all right, well, we'll give you $500,000 again, we're funding half of that amount from the money that was turned back for
Well,
for Giroux.
they could certainly do that as long as on the annual basis are meeting their minimum requirements for housing, so.
Yes, they certainly can do that.
They could,
Yeah,
okay. They
I
could.
agree with Keith.
And it
but
certainly behooves,
But I hope they would not.
I was going to say, it certainly behooves.
Well,
Yeah, I think that,
I would support authorizing the chair to write on our behalf to the CPC, indicating our hope that these monies would be held and reserved to support affordable housing in the future.
Second,
or words to that effect.
Right. Motion by Mike, second by
I have a question.
Rich.
I have a question about
Uh,
this stuff.
Is there,
So the
yes.
money that they allocated for the house at Giroux, was it for housing in general or for that project in particular?
It was for that project
It was that project in particular.
in
Okay.
particular.
And why
But
did it
yeah.
come in so low?
And,
Because-
and
because Habitat built it.
So if we had known,
Yeah.
if they had known that, they would have come in with a lower amount of money with the application. If they had known ahead of time that they were going to get a Habitat, right?
If this is the house, as I recall it, the select board thought, I think it was, my recollection, it was 700,000
Yep.
that was needed to do it, and the select board declined to support that, being too expensive.
Uh-huh.
And then the term, Stefan can probably give us
yeah,
better
Stefan,
than I can.
Yeah, I believe the original application to the CPC
Yep.
was before the cost escalated and before there was any discussion of habitat. So the 240 came in at a point in time when we thought the project would be done for 500,000. When it turned out to be 700,000, then the select board said, find another way, and the other way was habitat, and then once we went that road, the 240 was no longer needed. So it's kind of a legacy funding for a project that morphed as time went on.
But the 240 was part of the original, what was it, 500 or something that? Did the
300.
CPC make two allocations or just one?
It was 300 originally, and they spent 60 on feasibility and sewer hookup.
Okay, and that's, so I just want to be clear. So CPC allocated 300, but they only needed to spend 60, and that's where the 240 is coming back.
Yeah.
Right? Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
quite a deal. Okay, but
Yeah.
when CPC
Yeah.
allocated the 300, it was for the project, it wasn't for, well, it was for the project as part of housing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and at that point, the CPC.
right, it was for that location.
Can I just say, I tried to do a chat, but I think the chat doesn't, I can't chat for you all. So I have to leave at 6:10, just to let you
Okay.
know, in case you wanted to talk about the housing production plan thing before I go.
Okay, very good. We'll do that. We'll take that up next then. All right. So we have on the motion, authorize the chair, motion by Mike, second by Rich, to authorize the chair to send a letter to CPC as we discussed. Is there further discussion? So we'll take a roll call vote on that motion. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes,
Rich,
Aye,
Megan,
Yes.
and Keith. Aye. All right. So that passes unanimously. Thanks very much. I'm going to skip ahead to the item 6 on the housing production plan updates and talk about the housing production plan amendment process, which we had discussed at the housing roundtable on April 10th, that the CHDC had voted to support the idea of undertaking an amendment process this year. On April 2nd, the Housing Authority voted on April 4th and the trust on April 29th. So we saw as sort of a next step was to see if there could be a draft scope and a timeline and some just a check-in on whether we think there are sufficient funds budgeted for fiscal 2025 to have the our HSO undertake this, or whether we might need supplemental funds. And I want to thank Liz for her sending an update on that, which I emailed out to you all, and maybe you could just quickly go over that, Liz, and thank you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Do you all have that there? Do you want to screen share it? What do you want to do, right? All right, so let me just find mine here and find you. So I divided it up into six parts of the update, and then estimated each of those separately. So I think some of them are a little simpler than others, but updating the 2020 census, very basic, very routine kind of information. Updating the narrative for the SHI, achieving 10%, that's kind of throughout the document. And then specifically it's goal 1, which is really prominent, to maintain and achieve the 10%. So either remove that goal or revise it or something, we could talk about that, but so very low hours, but very prominent in the plan. Adding the MCI Concord property, and that would be sort of your choice of either add it to strategy 3, which talks about different parcels of land that would be available for housing or not available, but to evaluate for housing. And it lists a number of properties. So just put that in there as one of the pieces of property. Now, keep in mind, of course, that this is a 5-year plan, of which we're already probably 2 years in. So this would be like, 3 more years. So this, so some of these pieces of property go on longer than that, including perhaps this one, or create a new strategy if that's what you all desire there. So using information from existing sources. So that's very clear on our side that the housing production plan amendment process would not be creating new information. So to the extent that the advisory group has whatever information they have would come into this housing amendment process. So there wouldn't be brainstorming here as part of the housing production plan amendment process to discern what might happen on the land or ideas. Like that's happening in this other advisory group, and the housing production plan amendment is just reporting from what's in there, very abbreviated and put in here. It's really just a little placeholder. So that's more of a confirmation with you all that that's how to handle that. Then we have general updates. There might be some, the housing authority has made some changes in status, the CHDC funding, what happened at town meetings, reporting on some of those pieces. And then in terms of public process, include 3 public meetings, 1 to review the revised draft with the Housing Roundtable partners, 2 to review adoption with the planning board, and 3 review adoption with the select board. The scope does not include a broad community engagement for the purpose of defining new housing strategies and goals. We just did that, right? So it wasn't like let's create a new plan and have new goals and strategies. It was really to update what's in that plan with new information that already exists. So that is the scope, and then the hours are there. And if that's the scope that everyone agrees on, that scope is 120 hours, which can most likely be absorbed. And if by the Q3, in sort of in the winter time of FY25, if it seems that Concord needs more hours, then we can talk about purchasing at that time. It would be too early to purchase more hours at the beginning of the fiscal year because we don't know if that's really what's going to be needed.
Very good. Thanks, Liz. Rich.
I think the scope is fine. To me, the biggest issue is going to be whether Junction Village gets put on hold until we sort out what we want to do with the prison. And if it does, then I think other strategies should be moved up. And clearly I understand what Liz is saying. We can't have a big public process, but I think we need to have some discussion between the various housing agencies that it may be that we can get some units sooner by doing some other things, and that it may be that MCI is so big that it can produce a number of, whatever portion goes to housing can be built in such a way that it's more like a 40B, where we don't have to put a lot of money in to get affordable units. So that's my concern, not a question about the scope, but just I want to be sure that we have that discussion.
Megan?
Thank you. Yes, I have a little bit of a concern about kind of pulling 120 hours out of the pot for this. The RHSO, really speaking as a staff person right now, is under the division or Department of Planning and Land Management, and it's just I'd like to keep those hours for things that might come up. And so this wasn't planned for, but of course these situations were not planned for either. So I understand the perspective to update the plan, but I just wanted to raise that I do have a hesitancy when we talk about, purchasing additional hours. That hasn't been part of my budget. And the membership and the hours for RHSO comes from both my budget and CPC. So those funds have already been approved, and my budget is what it is. So I just want to clarify that, relying on funds for additional hours if we need it for work that we need done as part of the year it's just hadn't been planned in the next fiscal year. And I also wanted to mention, I did ask Liz, does this happen often? And she shared that it really is not common to update these documents so quickly. But again, I recognize that this is an unusual situation with such a both becoming onto over our 10% with these 240Bs and MCI Concord. I recognize that these are unusual times, but I guess I just wanted to share that I don't think anyone would be expecting us to update it. I think it would be a proactive effort. But if we didn't as a community, I don't think there would be major concern about why we didn't focus on this. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. And I really appreciate that perspective. I think what's unusual, what I see as unusual, where the idea came from, is that ordinarily the Commissioner of DCAM and the Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities would have no reason to be looking at our plans, except that they're being directed to do so by the legislation that Concord's asked to have passed to prove that to make Concord part of the process for the future of MCI Concord. So since it was perhaps unusual for us to have updated a master plan, updated the housing production plan last year, which still had 2010 census figures in it. The 2020 census figures came after that, and so that the state officials who will be looking at our plan have it would be awkward if they asked, well, how come this is 2010 census? Don't you know what the 2020 census figures?
I think it's a pretty minor
are
change.
housing?
And
Right, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so, right, well, it's an estimate of 50 hours for that
Oh,
minor change.
I'm in the population information from 2010 to 2020.
No,
I
I'm looking at bullet one
Oh,
Yeah,
for census information.
yeah, so I'm gonna say though, that from the needs assessment, the summary of what you draw from the needs assessment from decade to decade for Concord will not significantly change because of the difference in demographic and income information. the data on the individual charts. I think that, people understand that you're spending $30,000 on your housing production plan, and it's a point in time, and that when things change, you don't always have the resources and the ability to go and be spending, yet more money to open up the plans and resubmit them. These are significant financial and resource commitments to do the plans. They take almost a whole year to do. So I think that EOHLC understands that process. There are many, many municipalities who produce the plans on whatever basis, so they see them in all different kinds of ways. I'll say also from the RHSO's perspective, we aren't completely elastic in terms of being able to always respond and buy more hours. And, we're just kind of people who have a certain amount of ability to work. We can extend a little bit, and we have 3 housing production plans already, aside from Concord's, in our plan for next year. So we are very.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. I guess the larger discussion may be that as a community, what do we what are we going to think when our housing production plan is reviewed by the secretary and by DCAM, and are there, maybe there's just 5 pages you need to write to tweak it, of updating the obvious changes that have been made since then, and just have something. I mean, maybe it only takes 10 hours worth of work to do, because most of it is cut and paste. So, but anyway, that would be another approach. Mary?
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, I was thinking that the factual things like the census and the achieving the 10% and the MBTA zoning, I think that could be pretty straightforward. But I am wondering, when we get to the MCI Concord, how will that dovetail with the work that's being done by the advisory board? And when we're talking about the public process, which is public meetings, I guess I'm a little bit concerned about, once you bring MCI Concord into it, it's hard to contain that conversation within the scope of the housing production plan. You're gonna.
Yeah.
In other words, I would like to see the advisory board really take the lead on this, and the HPP be updated to show good data that can be used by both the commission. Commission's the wrong word, but the group that's going to be impaneled via the state legislation, and the group that's going to be locally will be impaneled very quickly. But so I guess I'm really concerned about the MCI, putting the MCI Concord in the HPP, because I remember, Keith, when you came to the select board meeting, you would say
it was that we would parachute that the select board has already set up a separate process to determine what the future of MCI Concord is.
Right.
And whatever that is should just be parachuted into into the housing production plan amendment. Maybe all that needs to be done is a simple, because the MCI Concord isn't listed in the housing production plan at all. It's the only reference to MCI Concord in the plan is to describe where the persons of color in Concord live.
Okay.
That's
Well,
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
that's
why I note that one is just to list it as a property in that strategy 3.
Okay, it's a
And
simple.
then just leave it there. So it's listed, but there's really no discussion around it.
That seems harmless to me.
Or if you wanted to do more, you could create a whole new strategy, but then that's opening the box, I thought, a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go there, really.
This is a very helpful conversation, because what I think is, in the bottom line, maybe let's think of 3 to 5 pages, term paper, okay, or that it's going to be an amendment, but it would serve as an addendum. It would be on page.
No, it's not that. It's a whole new. You submit a new document in its entirety, like a whole new 100-page document.
We'll see about. Well, I guess we'll see about that. That it's subject to EO. That they can You know, and even if that's what you do, fine, then you print out two versions, you print out what I'm talking about, an addendum, which would say in for each of these for each of the 4 bullets that are for the first 4 bullets, that you would say on page such and such of the original report, insert this paragraph, and do that for each of them. And then if you have to, if you then have to make that edit in a larger document and submit it, that's cutting and pasting in a Word document. I don't, if they need to see the 120 page document, that's fine. But it seems to me, all we need to produce for our own use is a 3 to 5 page document, maybe, which cuts and
Right. So
pastes
I
at
think
various
that maybe
points
for today,
in the
maybe
larger
for today, we
document.
don't have to talk about exactly how we're going to do that in terms of cut and pasting and all of that. But if this is the scope that you want, then we can talk about that and trying to work it into our work plan. I think that's probably the next step in working with Megan on that for the budget and the work plan at that higher level, if this is the proper scope.
Yeah, and I really do think that I'd be shocked if it took 120 hours to do that work. It seems more like you know, maybe 40 hours tops. And if there's other priorities of how the town's funds are being programmed, I mean, is there any money left over in fiscal 24 that for our HSO that won't be spent?
Well, actually, Keith, so if you're thinking it's less hours, what elements of the scope were you thinking which should be removed? Maybe we should think about
Public process.
to cut that, okay.
Well, I think you have to have it adopted and reviewed by the planning board and the select board. That's just what's required before you
Sure,
submit it
right,
to each of
yes,
us. And
okay.
that's two of those meetings. I'm
Yeah.
sure you would want to have it reviewed by the housing roundtable before it goes to those boards.
We do, but you're being paid to be there anyway.
Um, Okay, yeah. So I'm hearing that you
So-
feel like the hours are too high. You like the scope, but you feel like I've overestimated the hours for the scope. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that would be correct.
Okay.
And I mean, it comes down to whether it's advantageous for us and how the town presents itself to the state agencies that are going to be reading this plan. And I, for one, do not want us to be embarrassed by showing them 15-year-old census data by the time they get around to this. And not having included things that there's a section on the MBTA community zoning anyway. Let's just update it and said, and cut and paste what we did at town meeting. And same with the subsidized housing inventory, that we can update that certainly to include NOVO and the individual units that have been and are going to be added.
That's what this tries to articulate through the scope.
My hope would be that it's really, it's about 1 week's worth of work by somebody. Spread out over however, long that takes, and I know. So anyway, it's, I think this is a useful conversation. We should, I hear you about, that there are other funds, that there are other purposes for RHSO's time planned for Concord for the coming year. I mean, we don't know what that is, but you do. So if any of those things, other things that you'd be doing or would suffer, we'd want to know. And the trust itself, if it's important enough and it's a last resort, if the project needed, I don't know, I can't believe this is more than a $5,000 fix.
So let me ask a different question. So when, based on the process that you need this for, when do you need this done? When is DCAM going to be reviewing the
Yeah,
plan?
we need it. It's more information. Yeah, that others may know. I don't. When DCAM would be reviewing our documents.
Well, they're gonna set up the the group, as soon as the legislation is passed, which I guess let's estimate the end of July.
Why?
And then they've got to have they're required to have a public hearing within 45 days, so that they're probably gonna want to do some homework before they do that. I guess on the safe side, we'd want it ready by the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's a problem
actually-
in and of itself.
Actually, that's given me it's given me an idea, and maybe it's a shorthand way to accomplish the same thing. Without calling it a formal amendment process, let's produce a 3 to 5 page update ourselves, so we enter into the record of the public hearing and say, hey, these are the changes. This is all that we've done. I mean, I have things that I prepare for every meeting I go to that has this level of information available. And I think it would be a really quick update. If there's fear about taking on some process that has a life of its own, so maybe the shorthand way to address the fact that our housing production plan needs some updates is to just do the updates and enter them into the record of the hearing. Oh, by the way, here's our housing production plan for your record. Here's 3 to 5 pages of updates of things that have happened since then. And that's it. That way they'll know what
That was what I had my
2020
hand up for, was
Yeah.
to ask Liz whether that's a possibility.
Well, I don't think that wouldn't be submitted to HLC as an amendment to the housing production plan, but that would be submitted, through your process here or DCAM's process or something.
Mhm.
It wouldn't. Which would be
imagine
fine. It might meet your requirements and not have to go through a HPP amendment.
Right, it's the shorthand, it's communicating with the state through some process. And if the public hearing or something else, or sending a letter to the secretary and the commissioner is, hey, when you're reviewing our housing production plan, here's the update. We just, we issued a version 1.1. And here are the updates that tell you that we're above 10%. This is how we got there, that we did.
I think that's a
MBTA
much more
zoning.
tractable and positive approach. Going back and actually formally changing the housing production plan seems to me like, you could wind up doing that every couple of years. I mean, there's always going to be something comes up that's going to muddy the waters or provide new opportunities. So I think we did it, and at a particular date, it's it. But coming up with a nice piece that lays out substantive changes that have taken place since the adoption of this is a very positive way to
Yeah.
approach this. And,
Yeah.
and there have been, you know, a couple of very big changes. In addition to the new data, I mean, this MBTA zoning and MCI Concord, those are really big changes. And I think we should articulate them.
Can I ask, how do people get their hands on the housing production plan, and how could we attach this 3 to 5 page appendix or whatever we end up calling it, so that we make sure that they get that when they access our housing production plan?
Yeah, it's on the website. The housing production plan has got
Is that how
its own
people
landing
access it?
page.
The interested parties?
And that would be an appropriate place to stick on an update, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, Megan?
I just wanted to echo the comments. I think this is a great idea. I think the spirit of the effort, I fully agree with. I was having trouble with the mechanism and how the bigger process of updating the full plan and what that means and the impact. But I think this is a great idea to do a smaller update. And I imagine staff will play a role in assisting the state group who's going to be reviewing all these documents.
Right.
You know, I think that my team will be the ones pulling them together and delivering them.
Great. Good.
That's what with our relationship with DCAM. And I think that if there was a status update, and I think it's also would be nice for it to be approved by or reviewed and accepted, you know, somehow by the select board and
Yeah.
the planning board at a regular meeting, as this is what we all agree to. Don't you all agree that this is kind of what's been going on in Concord? To have that document ready and included in any conversation with reviewing of Concord's Envision Concord 2030 and climate action plan and all the plans that they'll likely be looking at.
Right, there's a lot, and we haven't even said in this context fossil fuel free, but the fact that we'll have a fossil fuel free 40B, it deserves a bullet in an updated plan. So maybe I guess I'd suggest that for our next quarterly housing roundtable, that this be a topic that we include this as a topic. I mean, I've got a general, even in having to pitch this idea, I have a general idea of the amendments that I think we'd want to include. And I'd be happy to forward those notes to Megan and Liz as a starting point if staff can put together, again, a 3 to 5 page document. I may have 3 of those pages already to just give us an update that we can think of as our update to the housing production plan, even if the state doesn't.
I have to go.
Yeah, I think if we came, Keith, to the next production plan with kind of an outline of what this addendum would look like, and use the roundtable to flesh it out, make sure we captured everything we want in there. And then we'd have, I think, a full sense and buy-in from the roundtable as to what this update would look like.
Right. Yeah, thanks. And even as I'm talking, I'm thinking, well, what would be most appropriate for the roundtable itself, which is tasked with implementing coordinating implementation of the housing production plan, is to look at the we've got 24 strategies in the housing production plan. So what's the status of, hey, let's do a status of those and identify what new things has happened. Maybe that's the most appropriate format. And just to say, we have an MBTA communities.
I really have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Yeah, that we have an MBTA communities strategy. We can just say, report all what happened. We have a strategy for acquiring, for encouraging. Strategy 3 encourages, strategy 3 actually is where Novo is listed. But the Novo site is listed as in strategy 3, so we include an update in that process. So anyway, not to belabor it, but I'd be glad to do an outline at least, and of what this alternative approach might look like. And I think that would, I think that would, I know it'd make me feel better about the state looking at a housing production plan. If they saw this updated reader's guide of what we've really been up to, because it's been a lot. So thanks.
The only thing that strikes me about that is the point that Rich made earlier, I think it was Rich anyway. And that is, if we think about these potential updates that we want to bring MCI, et cetera, how does that change our strategic structure for the production plan? I mean, that I think is perhaps an open question. It's one thing to list the things that have happened.
Yeah. Well, let's consider Junction Village. That's a specific, Assabet River Bluff is strategy number 1. Junction Village is strategy number 2. And I think strategy number 2 is in a state of flux right now. And actually it would be important to, and so something that might come out of that, a process about that would say, we need to get the state to amend the legislation, the 2010 legislation that says 100% of the units need to be affordable. In order to have that project proceed or something. Plenty of opportunities to do it, I think.
Yeah,
So-
because I can't help but think the whole Junction Village is not going to go to contract this fall. I'll be very surprised. And that it's going to get folded into whatever comes out of MCI. So to me, that says over the next 2 or 3 years, with Novo coming up, we might want to look at things slightly differently in terms of the priority list. Maybe buy downs are a better way to get a few units now, because if Junction Village gets tied up with MCI Concord, we're 10 years from anybody moving in.
Right. And what I'd say regarding the future, if our future includes a real estate transfer fee, we've got to substantially up our.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Keith, but I agree with it.
You froze.
Game here, people, on how we look at what development we're doing and step up to how you do that. So. Okay, sorry for keeping everyone so late. It's 6:18. And just I want to go back to we've been talking a bit about MCI Concord. And they're just for our record that that the charge has been approved for the local MCI Concord Advisory Board. There will be appointments made to that group at some point,
Yes,
and they'll start to meet.
Yeah, we had an informal meeting yesterday, I think. We're going to go ahead with the appointments next Monday night, and June 3rd we'll have the appointees. So it will be up and running on June 3rd.
Okay, great. June 3rd would be like their first meeting?
No, that's when they'll be appointed. The first meeting will be soon after that. And of course, all groups at first, they're just going to have to get into the cadence of their meetings and do a little bit of organizing. So
Right. Okay, so June 3rd is when they get appointed.
that's right.
Okay, a meeting after that. Great. Thanks so much. And we should all be let's see, today's May 14th, 1 week from today, the Senate takes up debate on its budget, which includes the Senate Ways and Means budget already includes language that is very close to what the House passed regarding MCI Concord, and Senator Barrett is requesting $475,000 for the town in his amendment. The House passed 250, but Simon and Carmen had requested 475. So Mike's going to request that original amount, and we'll see how that happens. So, great. On 40B updates, I had mentioned residences at Thorough earlier. Just wanted to mention for the record of this meeting that as of April 29th, HLC has approved inclusion of Novo's 201 units on the subsidized housing inventory. So it was that act on April 29th that officially got us over 10%, and we're currently at 12.8%. And to stay above and to have those units continue to be counted, a building permit has to be pulled within 1 year, and then an occupancy permit issued 18 months after the building permit. So we'll be keeping an eye on that project as it proceeds. Great. Any updates on any of the projects? Some of us were at a meeting of the CHDC this morning. I know they're reviewing Assabet River Bluff proposals, or they've set up some interviews with the two proposers for next week at their meeting, and so glad to see that moving along. Megan had an update for us on the 91B Main Street state surplus state property that I think I had put out a blurb about that in the advance of the meeting. And anything additionally, Megan, that you'd have to add about that or any other projects?
No, just to make sure everyone on the call is aware, there is a property that was identified, 91B Main Street, that it's a 1.46 acre of surplus state property. And it had been identified as a potential site for housing, for affordable housing. So I was working with my team to find out how we could acquire it, and I learned that the state, to see if we could get it for under market value, which would be nice. But it turns out they really have to sell it at market value, which would be around $600,000. There was some internal analysis done by my predecessor that showed that they might be able to accommodate 4 units at this site. And so that information, we've been kind of wondering and bounced around to the state about like how much would this cost? And so the information was market value. And so I haven't taken it to the next step yet about kind of having conversations about, is this something that, I just talked to Keith about it briefly, but is there interest in using funds to purchase this? And if so, what would the process be to develop? And I think that there's of course a lot of interest to continue to produce housing. And so this is still on the table as an avenue, but it's not a kind of a discounted avenue at this point.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful news. I know when it had come up before or it had been discussed maybe even sometime last year with the select board, one of the suggestions was to see whether our congressional delegation could get a ruling out of federal highways and I'm not sure if they've been engaged or not, but it's the state state highway department is saying the federal highway department has to sell it at market, and it might be worth having
Yeah.
Lori Trahan's office or Senator
Confirm.
Warren or
Yeah.
Senator Markey, just see if they could verify that information. But sometimes when a member of Congress asks about it, the federal agency might be more flexible.
Is this right on Route 2?
No, it's on Main, it's on.
Yeah, it's the corner of Route
It
2 and
backs
Main
up to
Street.
Route 2. Yeah, it backs up to Route 2, but there's a house there's a house on the corner, right, which is closer to Route 2 than
Okay.
the
so I'm
front. The
just
front of the
wondering-
property is on Main Street,
Okay.
at the light.
'Cause you know,
Across
the Mass
Route 2.
DOT is looking seriously at the redesign of Route 2, and I just wonder, is this property for sale? Is it surplus? Or
No.
we
They
were
had-
making the overtures to them to see if they would,
Yeah, I think that Marcia had made the overtures to MassDOT in the
Yep.
past, and we got so far as, the town did an appraisal. It says it's worth 600,000 and change. The state did an appraisal in the same area, and then the hope was that it could actually be acquired for a lesser amount if
Yeah.
if the feds allow. And from the trust standpoint, since as of July 1st, we'll have a balance of $2.5 million, and that's it for this year. And about $1.5 million of that is earmarked for to complete Assabet River Homes. So that would really leave about $1 million for us to do everything else, anything else, unless there's a real estate transfer fee in our future. So I think we'd want to consider carefully what this property did not get included in the MBTA community zoning district. And the reason for that is that each sub-district has to have at least 5 acres. And there was no surrounding property that to easily attach it to, and it's only 1.1 acres, I think. So it has whatever developability could come from a planned residential development under our bylaw, but not under MBTA community zoning, which would be 15 units per acre. So
Keith, I
the
think we
development
ought to-
potential is.
I
Yeah.
think we ought to put this one on the back burner. It's not going to go away. There's a risk that it could get pulled into whatever redesign of Route 2 happens. And I
Yeah.
can, while we fiddle around with this, we might be able to buy a couple of units at Kai's Road or Concord Green or something like that with the same amount of money. So I appreciate what Megan's done, but at this point, I think I'd move it down the list.
Yeah, I think that what would move it up is if we could buy it for less, and it still may be worth asking the congressional delegation if they could get us an answer on that. But it's helpful to have this update and this discussion. So thank you. Thanks for that. The last thing I wanted to talk about is funding for the trust, state legislation. We talked a lot about the real estate transfer fee. There's a push that's going on right now by the LOHA Coalition, by the Mass Mayors Coalition, MAPC, and others to push for the real estate transfer fee in the face of a lot of organized opposition from the realtors. So it'll be coming up for a vote in the House, a debate and a vote in the House next, probably, I'm told it might be right after the Memorial Day weekend that the debate will start, and then it goes to the Senate, maybe later in June or July. So now is a good time to mobilize. And one of the things that we've been talking about for a while was pitching this, did you know, in our immediate area, in all of the 13 towns in the Magic Subregion, and all of the member communities that are in the Regional Housing Services Office, Concord's, and it's a total of 20 communities. Concord's the only one that's pitching for a real estate transfer fee. So we might so we have a unique stake in this, and so we've been looking for ways to do outreach to our fellow municipal affordable housing trusts that we've never met as a group. We've never met. We've done outreach to Sudbury, whose chair is Rep. Carmen Gentile, one of the other hats he raises. One of the developers who's put in a bid on Assabet River Bluff. He chairs the Maynard's Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, and there's a lot of our counterparts in other communities. It might be good to just get them together. MAPC staff has volunteered to organize a first meeting just to get the trust together. For Rep. Gentile, the date of Wednesday, May 29th at 8 a.m. Looked like a good time for him, and so we were going to just try it as an experiment and invite folks to a virtual meeting that MAPC would invite the housing trusts. It'd be an opportunity to pitch the real estate transfer fee to them, because they'd be the beneficiaries if their towns accepted it, but also to talk about what issues we're all confronting, and maybe to do a deeper dive at future meetings on things like housing development, on for some communities, it's how do you borrow money if you have a revenue stream. It'd be all sorts of all sorts of things that we could do a deeper dive at. So we're looking to have an initial meeting, which would be 2 weeks from this morning, and we'll see how that goes. If I guess I will ask for public comment. If anyone on the call would like to be recognized. Yes, Ray Andrews. Can't hear you yet, Ray. Nope.
Okay.
There
Okay. That'll
There
make
you
it
go.
work. Yeah. CHDC is still holding on the Junction Village until September 30, and everybody on the CHDC assumes that means September 30, 2024, not September 2030. But we have had not much encouragement to, know how to move after that in terms of Junction Village. And there was a proposal to add some land adjacent to the 2013 parcel for housing, and Keith, your suggestion to somehow reduce the 100% affordable component of the prior parcel might allow Mike Barrett, or Mike might allow our dealings with the state to expand the affordable housing or the housing component of that parcel without waiting for final resolution of the whole property. Is there any guidance from the trust on that? Or from anybody on the trust from this call?
Yeah, I think that I think that the MCI Concord Advisory Board process is going to be a great venue to raise that and whatever communications there are between the town and the state, that if basically it is, in what way can Junction Village advance that allows something to happen, and what relief do you need to get in order to be able to do it? And so I would think that the and we're happy to help, advocate, but I think that the venue should probably be that MCI process.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Other folks who want to be recognized? All right. The next item is to schedule a next meeting of the trust. We usually meet on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I'm wondering if let's see.
18th.
Yeah, 18th. How would the 18th of June be
Works for me.
for folks?
Okay, good.
Great, okay.
Same
So we
time.
shall do it. All right. Well, again, sorry for going on so long, and appreciate all the feedback and direction. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Mike, second by Rich. I'm going to do a roll call vote on that motion. Mary,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rich,
aye.
Megan,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. That motion passes unanimously, and the meeting is adjourned at 6:37 PM.